Have you ever thought about the fact that the prince from Cinderella is kind of an idiot? I mean, he can't remember the face of the woman that he's presumably in love with, and also, I feel like that shoe could have fit on anyone, unless it was specifically melted to her foot, in which case, how did it come off? These thoughts and more are probably thoughts that you've had at least once when it came to Cinderella. And that's unfortunate because besides those few things, Cinderella's kind of a timeless classic with lessons that are still valuable today about self-confidence and rejecting shallowness. That's why in my first year of high school back in 2020, I thought to myself, man, Cinderella really would make a lot more sense if it had been about a masquerade ball instead. This idea eventually fused with me learning about a story called Tattercoats, which was similar to Cinderella in specific ways, but the broad strokes were very different. While I had started writing a script for a movie about this, I decided to revitalize it because it was back before I did plot outlines, which is a really important part of my process now. Plus, I just think I could do a lot better now that I know more about storytelling. So, without further ado, here's my idea for a Cinderella movie called Cinderella Masquerade. First, let's start with the titular character. This story's Cinderella has the vast majority of her backstory taken directly from the story Tattercoats. She is the neglected daughter of a king who hates her because her mother died during childbirth. However, the specific detail that her mother's ashes were buried and grown into a willow tree are kept for aesthetic purposes and also thematic purposes in the story. Also, the fact that her mother's name was Ella and the fact that the tree is grown from her ashes is what gives Cinderella her alias. The theme of this story is, for lack of a better word, masks. For example, Cinderella wears a mask of confidence, trying to convince everyone around her when she is Cinderella that she believes in herself, that she is confident. But when she's Tattercoats, she is more apologetic, reserved. The lesson that she ultimately needs to learn is that confidence doesn't come from convincing other people that you're confident, it comes from convincing yourself. From an aesthetic standpoint, her outfits would be very floral and autumnal, reminiscent of the willow tree that's so important to her backstory, and matching this vibe, instead of a pumpkin carriage, her carriage is grown from the roots of the willow tree. By the way, I'll be talking about the aesthetics a lot because that's kind of an important way that I would tell the story of this. In place of a more traditional fairy godmother, we have Jacob the goose herd. He's Tattercoats' lifelong friend and, as he's recently revealed, her fairy guardian. And when I say fairy, I mean Fae Court. His masquerade mask, which he wears when he's in guardian mode, is a heavily bedazzled, pearly, fully swan nose design. Sticking to the theme of goose herd, the coachman is a woman who used to be a goose. The mask Jacob wears is professionalism. He is embarrassed to be emotional, so tries to think purely analytically, though sometimes he can't help himself, but tries to make Cinderella's life just objectively better. Of course, he has to learn that quality of life and quality of living are not always the same thing, and to be emotionally wise as well as knowledgeable. The final good guy of the story is Prince Edgar. Whatever setting Edgar is in, he's trying to appeal to that. When he's not in the castle, he's trying to be as casual as possible. When he's in the castle, he's trying to be pompous and larger than life and royal. He wears comfortable clothes outside and non-comfortable but aesthetically pleasing clothes when he's in the castle. Of course, this is his mask, because he's not really either of these extremes. He's something in the middle, something much more sympathetic, someone who cares about the people of the nation that he's supposed to rule over, but also cares about what he can do for them with his power. He just doesn't know how to balance that. His arc is learning to be himself. Now, in opposition to these arcs is Count Stefan, the villain. He is Cinderella's manipulative caretaker. He is the exact opposite of self-acceptance. He has stripped himself of anything that makes him unique in order to gain power. And what does he plan to do with that power? Strip away the uniqueness of others. Anything he wears is meant to be both routine and uniform, while still being pop out, I'm the most important here statement piece as it can. Now, of these characters, obviously the most important character arc is Cinderella herself. And the most important part of her character arc is her dynamic with Edgar, which also happens to be the most important part of his character arc. Edgar actually meets Cinderella and Tattercoats at 2 different points, and forms different dynamics with the 2 of them. With Cinderella, he's taken aback by how vibrant and lively she is. This is kind of Tattercoats putting on an act, and while that confidence does intrigue Edgar, it's not love, it's more infatuation. Now with Tattercoats, there's a different connection. More of the tropey, sappy, romantic stuff you'd expect from this kind of story. But it's still not really love, at least not romantic. It's platonic. It's a deep friendship, but with potential. It's only when the self of Tattercoats and the self-worth of Cinderella mix that Cinderella can be fully herself and Edgar can fall fully in love with her. And from Cinderella's perspective, it's kind of the same thing, but in a different flavor. There's an immediate interest for Edgar, not because she's intrigued by his personality, but intrigued by the fact that he's kind of hiding it. She can tell he's lying when he's around other people, but in the moment that the mask slips, she sees a spark. And she wants to pursue that, and she wants to learn who's really behind that mask, so that she can be that safe space for him. In other words, they both make each other want to be themselves with each other. Now, while this is a nice goal, it is somewhat impeded by the larger plot of the story. That including a potential coup, an impending war, and hierarchy problems of all kinds and people suffering of poverty in the streets, but the finer details of that aren't things I've ironed out, and even if they were, I kind of want to keep that for myself. But besides that, there you have it. The elevator pitch for Cinderella Masquerade. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, feel free to leave a comment or like. Let's have a discussion about your own ideas on a Cinderella story, what you thought of mine, what I'll think of yours. And if you'd like to support me so that I can maybe one day make one of these movies for real, I have a Patreon where I post monthly schedules and occasionally sections of stories I'm writing. And until next time, thank you for watching, and thank you for liking movies.